So I realized when I started editing the video for Frodo that we got started before we got started. There was a really cool piece in the front that I wanted to include with the interview. So the editing is a little choppy because of that. But I think you're really going to enjoy meeting Reverend Frodo Okulam. Here she is.
Lighting's a little better. What do you think? Is it better?
Oh, I like it. Yeah, it is way better. And I like the painting in the background too. So
You know, that's my childhood backyard.
that's
I
cool.
found this in my mom's stuff, and I had actually done a painting of my backyard when I was pretty young.
Oh
So,
wow.
and I found my childhood backyard, my trees.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So let's go ahead and get started. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. Well, hi,
Ask my
Frodo.
kitten if he's ready. Hi.
So God, it's been forever since we've seen each other. I guess pre-pandemic, it was even quite some time. Um,
We've seen each other in a little window, maybe, but
yeah, this big, yeah. Well, I'm going to switch this to gallery view because, or to speaker view there, and that will record it better. Um, so thanks for doing the interview. I'm glad that you took some time out of your busy schedule. I know you do a lot. But why don't you introduce yourself and tell my people what it is you do?
hi, my name's Frodo Okulam. And I'm the coordinator of Sisterspirit, which is a women's spirituality group. Um, and I teach topics in feminist spirituality at PSU. And those are the main things. But yeah,
And that's Portland State University.
university.
Yeah,
Yeah.
believe.
Sorry, I
Yeah,
wasn't sure we're all in this area or yeah.
yeah. Now some of my yeah, I have some viewers from like overseas, Mexico and Australia.
That's wonderful. That's one of the, now that we're all in the Zoom universe is I have students everywhere, from Alaska to Arizona. So at PSU and also in Sisterspirit, people come from overseas or wherever they are. So it's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, how do you identify yourself? Uh, your spiritual belief.
My spirituality. Wow. Um, I would say I'm an eclectic pagan, Wiccan, goddess spirituality, and basically Dianic. The goddess is primary, but I also have a place for the god in my practice. And my eclectic spirituality goes beyond just paganism. Wherever the goddess is, however she shows up, that's where I am. My root and core spirituality, my name is Frodo, comes from the Lord of the Rings. That was my introduction to who the goddess is, as Elba, Lord of the Rings. So that kind of was my beginning, and after, just absorbing everywhere I could find her, I've come back really to that core practice, and not just in paganism and Wicca, but beyond that. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Like Tolkien, I'm also Catholic Christian, but feminist Christian, not patriarchal, and celebrating the goddess in all her forms, wherever she shows up, especially if she looks like Elbereth. If she looks like the star goddess, I'm there.
Yeah, I love it. That's great. You know, I think we've known each other going on 20 years, maybe. I don't know. And you've always been Frodo. When did
Yeah,
you
I've always been Frodo.
when did you become Frodo? How long ago was it that you took that name?
Legally 1989. That's
Wow.
the name change was in 1989. And the option of the name, probably I was in about the 8th grade when I started going by Frodo, started out at summer camp, and then in high school. And so, yeah, Frodo And then Okulam, Frodo Okulam started out as a pen name when I was writing. And then everybody knew me by that name. And so eventually I just made it legal. Okulam means the sound of the surf in Chinook. And I picked that name out of a book as well. I like the word because it sounds like a wave crashing on the rocks, which is what it means. It means the sound of the surf. And I wanted something that connected to this land.
Yeah. So you're native to the Northwest?
I was born here, yeah, Portland.
Awesome.
And parents too, my parents too. I'm second generation. My mom was born when her family was on a trip to visit their relatives in West Virginia. Grew up in Portland. So I consider myself second generation.
That's awesome. So how do you think your paganism has affected your life?
That's an interesting question because I mean, it is my life, you know, it's how I see the world as alive. I suppose you would say animus, right? I see everything as inspirited, everything is sacred, all beings, you know, even beyond the beings, the interconnection of everything is alive, speaking to me. And how paganism is as well. And it's really how I see things. My practice, you know, when we're celebrating, when we're doing anything, practices in our spirituality, to me, those practices celebrate how we see everything. This is my familiar Sonny. He will probably be in and out of the interview.
Oh. So it's your practices that define your paganism?
You know, they've said, well, I guess it was Margot Adler that in Drawing Down the Moon that said paganism's more, it's a tradition of ethics and practices more than of beliefs. And I love the quote by Starhawk where somebody asked her if she believes in the goddess, you know, and she said, well, do you believe in rocks? You know,
Right.
look at the rock and you know, name it rock or whatever it is in your language. It is. You observe that it is. And that's kind of where I am. And so really, it's about how we celebrate that, you know, how we connect with that, how we celebrate that.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. So you mentioned that you read Lord of the Rings when you were somewhere in your early years. How exactly did you get to be this goddess? I don't want to say worshiper because that's kind of an overlay.
That's one of those other words that we need a better word. So
right.
Good, I think. Well, okay, so I read The Lord of the Rings, and about probably it started in 4th grade when somebody read The Hobbit to us in class, our teacher. And so then I started reading the books, right? And like all the time. And the world, Middle Earth rang true, so true. And just found myself connecting with the view of the universe, you know, in the Lord of the Rings. And then I would Tolkien Society in high school in the Portland area, Portland Smile, Tolkien Society of America. And then I went on to college, and I went to, you know, trying to make connections there. I went to the Gay Student Union first, and then I went to the Women's Union, it was called then. And in the Women's Union on the shelves, there was a magazine called Woman Spirit. And it was issue number 1, Woman Spirit magazine. And I thought, I wonder what that's about. I like women and I like spirit. Let me see what this is about. And on the first page, Jean Mountain Grove was saying, I'm on a journey back into the past, forward into the future, down into my center. And I thought, oh, me too. And then they were talking about the goddess. And I went, whoa, there's other people, there's other people who celebrate her. And in fact, there's a whole traditions being revived. And it was a really exciting time. The people were connecting through writing in that magazine. When they came to Portland to do an issue, I was part of the group that put that issue together. And that's how I met the people who were in my first coven. So I ever walked into circle. Tassa Wolfstar was in that circle, one of my mentors from the beginning. They were with a coven within, or a grove, Lotus Grove, within the Morgan McFarland's Mother Grove of Austin, Texas, was the tradition. So then I joined that coven and began to learn. So from that time on, just, wherever my path takes me, I started Sisterspirit in 1985 because I thought there should be, or there needed to be, a place where all traditions could come together, not just in one tradition, not narrowly defined, but eclectic. And from that time on, we've been about eclectic goddess spirituality, and we've been a women's circle. And so I should explain all that a little more.
Yeah, would you please?
Each now, I was like, we need a one sentence definition. Sisterspirit is a women's circle celebrating the goddess and nature through female imagery in many traditions. Yay, that's our one sentence.
Well done.
But based on all of our statements to that effect, that's who we are. And some things about that are, I think all cultures have always had places where the whole community celebrates, and then there are these societies within the subgroups of the community. And one of those is usually there's a women's society or a women's circle. And some cultures even have a whole different language that women speak. So, and many cultures have not just two genders either. A lot of the old cultures have, genders or whatever it is, more than one. The early Inanna writings have gender reversal, where the priestesses and priests of ecstasy and lamentation are gender reversed. So we've been community broadly open to our definitions of ourselves and our understanding of who we are from the very beginning. So when I say we're a women's circle, it's intersecting with a larger community. We also found we needed to have a definition of women. So in Sisterspirit, women are those who've lived as a woman for at least a year and feel comfortable as a woman among women. So that's our definition, and that's been our definition since probably 88 or so, at least by then. We didn't put it into our bylaws for a while, but that's been our working definition.
And Sisterspirit has a great reputation in the Portland area, I should say, for putting on some amazing rituals. So I hope every community has a group like Sisterspirit somewhere within it. I really do.
Yeah, and we really appreciate all the other groups. Many or most of us do more than one, or we go to more than one group's things. One of the things I love about this area is different groups will put on different festivals when we used to be able to do festivals. But
Right. We'll do it again someday.
ours that we put on is called Pagan Fair. And that we started, I think that started in '89, but I could be wrong. I don't remember numbers well, so I'd have to look up the date. But that's our spring equinox festival for the community. For the past several years, we've had it at Oaks Park. You know, we now are reserving for the third time not being able to have, you know, since we this year or last year, but I think by next year, hopefully, we will be doing that, because we felt, for two reasons. One, it started out as a fundraiser for Sisterspirit. Basically, it pays for the next fair and some of the insurance, so we can have large fairs. So it's kind of, as a fundraiser, it funds mostly itself, but and then also because we felt like, you know, instead of just being in our own little bubble, we wanted to be intersecting or giving something to the community. So and the other groups do that too. The others who put on festivals or who have put on festivals in the past, it's always a great gift to the community.
Talking about community service, that's where a lot of it comes in, is at festivals.
Yeah, I'm kind of jumping ahead in the questions, aren't I?
No, you aren't. You're right there, actually.
My questions are on my phone, and I hope nobody calls me because the ringer's on. But,
oh, that's okay.
Turn your ringer off before you're on Zoom. Anyway.
That's one of those things we're all learning, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you did mention that, you know, Sisterspirit is more of a labor of love. It funds itself, which I think is the norm for pagan festivals in general. So other than Pagan Fair, where else do you serve the community?
Okay, well, Sisterspirit, let me just say, has a ritual for women's ritual about when we're able to have them. And now they're on Zoom, so once a month or so, definitely on or near the major holidays of the Wheel of the Year. And we have small groups too, one of which is Nature's Magic, still going. We have had a healing circle. I think that may be, it's been meeting on FaceTime, I think, but that may be going again soon. And the other things that I do, not for Sisterspirit, but well, sort of for Sisterspirit, they're in favor of it. I teach at PSU. And I came into that Portland State University. I went to PSU for my BA. I got my BA in music there. I'm a violist. And then I went to, when I began to practice my spirituality, one of the places where I was practicing, besides in the pagan community, was with Metropolitan Community Church. And that's the denomination. It's an ecumenical Christian denomination in the GLBTQ plus community. So I began to serve in that denomination, and eventually, when I was ordained, started Sisterspirit, or I started when I was licensed, and then later they ordained you after they found out. Sisterspirit began as a special work of MCC, and then we branched off, and this came legally from that parent, but that allowed us to be legally constituted as a nonprofit before we were really ready to do that. So that was a really nice gift from MCC. And it was not comfortable because, they're, even though they're open-minded and GLBTQ and all that, they weren't too sure about pagans in the beginning. I mean, some people always were, but there was an education process. Let's just put it that way. That was mostly positive, mostly people came to understand that over time. I've just been going back through the archives, so I'm remembering all the history of that. Anyway, so then after I was ordained, I went back to school and got my master's in theology at Mount Angel Seminary, which is a Roman Catholic seminary. I knew somebody who knew somebody who was going there. Anyway, and I thought, well, where am I going to get my graduate degree? And somebody had told me I should go to Catholic seminary. Not Catholic, why would I do that? And it was actually really good because it allowed that growth that happens when you're talking with people whose language is different than yours. And you learn to articulate, sort of, as much as we can when we're talking about spirituality, but you try to articulate your beliefs in a way, not just your own people with your own experience or from your own socioeconomic group or whatever, other people who are really different than you, to be able to speak and understand each other. So that was really good for me. So I got my master's. Well, then Jamie, my partner, was going to PSU, and she was working in the women's studies department and as a student employee. And they had been having women's spirituality classes for many years by then, always taught by the campus ministers. The ecumenical ministries of Oregon and had ministers on campus there, and all the Catholic Church had ministers on campus. So whoever the campus ministers were, the women would always teach women's spirituality for PSU. Well, then the campus ministry wasn't funded anymore, and they couldn't. And so then the next year, their women's spirituality courses were taught by somebody to be a chaplain at Lewis and Clark. But anyway, she is Catholic Franciscan sister, but it wasn't really secure in its funding. There was a special program out of sociology, I think, that funded it. Well, then somebody said, well, women's studies should take it over, the women's spirituality class. So they were wondering, well, who's going to teach it? And Jamie said, well, why not Frodo? I've been a speaker at the class for years, when they needed to have a Rena Pagan come and talk about our spirituality of paganism. I've not just at PSU, but at Reed and at Pacific University and at Marylhurst when it was a university. Anyway, so she said, well, why not have Frodo teach the class? And Johanna Brenner, who was the department chair at the time, said, oh yeah, oh yeah, we have somebody, don't we? And Jamie said, yeah, she's got her master's. So I talked to Jamie and I talked to Amy in Sisterspirit, who had been in the class when Sister Loretta was teaching it. I said, do you happen to have a syllabus from that class? I want to find out, because Johanna calls me and she says, in May or something, and she goes, teach women's spirituality this summer. And I was like, okay, what do I do? So I found out what was part of the class and said yes, and started teaching it. And from that, it branched out to add a bunch of 1 credits, and then later on 4 credits at PSU under the Topics in Feminist Spirituality umbrella. So the one next term is Feminist Biblical Interpretation. Fall term, we trade off between the Goddess, class in the Goddess, and Ecofeminist Spirituality. And the winter term class is still Women's Spirituality, like it's been from way before I took it over. So there's 4 classes in that topics program. But that's kind of important, I think, for the pagan community to have people who are reaching out through higher education venues to invite people into, the ways that we understand the world, the ways that we make meaning. And nowadays, I think you have to start with, well, what is spirituality? What is, and how is that word different than religion?
And
And
this is where you start.
yeah, because a lot of people come, they reach the level of higher education, college, without having any background in anything about spirituality, or they've been given one narrow way of understanding religion and don't look outside this path. And even with the availability of the internet and information, there's too much information. It's hard to navigate where you are in that realm. So to give people some idea, what is this spirit that is sort of undefinable, and invite people to explore. So I see myself in that realm as inviting people to explore, to find out how to research or to search for what they want to know, and try on some different worldviews, see how other spirits, other religions, other cultures view the world. And these days, there's usually, I don't know, 5 at least or so Wiccans or pagans in my classes. So that's great. Yay. We are there.
That makes me so excited.
Yeah.
So, favorite anecdote, favorite story of being a pagan?
Gosh. So I have my favorite stories, but some of them I'm like, should I tell this story? But the one that just flashed in my mind, and it's not about Sisterspirit, it's about, well, Katrina, who was in Sisterspirit, she's branched out now. She was leading a winter solstice sunrise on the top of Rocky Butte. So I live near Rocky Butte, so I went up there, and there was a circle going. So I joined the circle, and we had this circle. It was great, and everybody's masked, right? So after I was talking to I saw some people I knew over in this corner. I went over and started talking to them, and it turns out that circle was not the one that I went up there to join. And I said, "You mean that wasn't us?" It was some other circle doing winter solstice sunrise pagan circle. This is great because these traditions are taking over the world. Not that we want to take over the world, but we do want people to reconnect with things like the solstices and equinoxes and the rhythms of the natural world. So that was really good to see. But there was nothing in that circle that I thought, that triggered me about, except I thought, I don't know these people. But I mean,
they seem friendly enough. Yeah.
I loved that. Some of the other things that have happened, those times when there's synchronicity. Like yesterday, I did a tarot reading that I regularly do readings for. And she was looking for her brother. They hadn't heard from her brother for a while. And she called me about 2 hours later. I just heard from my brother. Sometimes things are like that. If things happen right away that you don't expect or that you hope for, and it's just right there. It's just right there. Yeah. I love it when those things happen. And there are stories. There are stories.
Oh gosh. Yes.
Things like, the one of the funny ones, I shouldn't tell this. The time when we weren't going to invoke Karen and Oath. Usually in Sisterspirit, we're invoking the goddess because it's women celebrating her. And so it just makes sense. And at Pagan Fair, I think I remember one pagan fair that was all goddesses, but mostly there's goddesses and all of the above. Those who are both, and those who are neither.
Right.
In the ritual drama, but this one circle, it was fall equinox, And I said, I think we should invoke Kiernanos. I just feel like that. And they were like, well, why would you women's circle? We're not going to invoke Kiernanos. Okay, fine. We won't invoke Kiernanos. So we're in the middle of the opening invocations. And we're up in Forest Park off of 53rd Drive, not far from the Audubon Society, a little meadow up there. And we hear this crashing in the bushes, and here comes this huge buck, you know, with running right through the edge of the circle.
Wow.
If you want
Oh no.
Kiernanos in the future, that's fine. But anyway,
That's funny.
when we
Oh,
invoked at Lammas Moon in a Wee Moon land, and as we invoked the directions, when we invoked the east, an eagle flew over, and the south, a rabbit showed up. And we couldn't see whoever it was in the west because they were probably leaping in the stream, but it's not close enough to see from the circle. We invoked the north, and somebody who was standing in that area of the circle said, the earth is moving. And she said, look, you guys. Then everybody looks, and the ground was going. There was a mole under the meadow that was pushing like this in the north, right when we invoke the north. So sometimes, you know, the universe is so connected. And also at Wee Moon, we invoked the south. Pat was invoking the south, and she goes, powers of fire, and this meteor goes right across the circle. So those times are what you remember, you know, the times when we did a ritual that we were a little worried about, and it turned out to be amazing and wonderful.
yeah.
So many stories now over the years.
Yeah. I'm glad that we're catching a lot of them on, at least, you know, and being told on video, even though the video wasn't there at the moment. I think it would ruin things if someone were to stop and say, let's get a camera, catch this mole digging.
Well, and we don't record our circles. We still aren't, even on Zoom, just because we feel like it changes the energy. I think we're going to have to change that, though, because so many people, the only way they can connect is through, you know, seeing a recording, able to be there in person. But we've had that ethic about not having an observer out there, you know, looking from the outside at what you're doing, because that's another energy level that just has felt like it throws it off, kind of. We've had people do it surreptitiously, record their ritual or whatever, and we're like, no, you're not supposed to do that. But I think we're going to have to relent.
Yeah, I think some recording of some ritual should be allowed, but probably not all.
Yeah. Or, you know, usually weddings are now, hand fastings and memorial things that you really do want to return to again.
Right. Yeah. So what do you think paganism and magic does for or against, beneficial or not, for your mental health?
Wow. The one time I can remember when well, there's been more than one time, but one time when I was in a deep depression. I was in what they call a dark night of the soul, you know, or just deeply depressed. And about a week that way one time. This has happened more than once, but this one time, not hardly ever in my life, but once or twice it's happened. And one time like that, I was in that place, and my cat walked by. I was outside and I went, there are cats. Then I looked at the tree and I said, there are trees. And pretty soon, okay, there's grass, there's flowers, I began to see the natural world. My senses took in what I was looking at once again. And the web of meaning wove itself back together. And then it was only a few minutes before I went, well, yeah, there is the goddess. There is the goddess, and I had my place back in the web of life. But so the way I see the world as woven together, and a strand can come out, but then everything is interconnected. So eventually you find the way to weave that meaning back into your understanding of the world and to really feel it, because it comes from the heart. It's not head stuff, it's heart stuff. It's whole body stuff. So yeah. So
yeah, that's the way I see it. Yeah.
It's really the way I've come back to mental health when I've been unhealthy. And when the other side of that, of course, is when somebody in my community or somebody's have been not just where the criticisms have kind of become fiery darts that have hurt my heart. And that's partly me letting them in too. It's not just whoever's saying whatever they need to say or feel they need to say, but it's when those things have happened, it's really hard. And that's one of the reasons I'm involved in more than one community, because sometimes when one community, when I feel like it's just, I'm not okay, I'm not okay, I can reach out to somebody else in the other communities in my work. They are there, and Sisters in Sisterspirit will do that too. They'll do that too. But it helps, I've felt, to have those other perspectives. So the other perspectives can say, no, that's not how you are. That's not how I experience you. And, it's been really good. So then again, there's the larger community. I guess that's not really unhealth, but I think for any of us, communities can become ingrown. And because paganism and Wicca are minority still religions, even though the largest religion, if you put it all together in the world, is indigenous traditions. More than Catholics or more than Muslims or more than any other of the religions you've heard about. If you put all the indigenous traditions together, there's more.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then people know that fact because it's not talked about. And part of it is, in indigenous traditions, you want to be considered as your tribal tradition and not just lumped together,
Right.
or appropriate yet. So, but it is true. Those indigenous traditions that are connected to the land are the largest group of traditions in the world. Anyway, but usually we think of ourselves as a minority religion, and as a minority religion, you can get insular. You can get to feel like, well, everybody else is other than us. And when that happens, it's a really short path between that and othering people in a way that's unhealthy, or feeling like you're being othered in a way that's unhealthy.
Yeah.
So we have to be aware of that. We have to be, and we have to also reach out beyond our community. Like for some of the festivals, they'll collect food for the food pantries, to reach out and help others, just whoever they are. Sister Spirit has Michelle's Heart Fund that we say it's an emergency fund for women and their families, which if you think about it, everybody's women's family. Families including other beings who we live with, their cats, whoever they are. But it's for last ditch emergencies. So lots of bigger organizations than ours help people. So if there's some other organization that they can get help from, we'll refer people to whoever does that. But for the things that maybe nobody else is filling the gap here, and our little drop in the bucket actually will make a difference, then we have a fund for that. And I think where we reach out beyond our the edge of our circle are really important.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. So here's the final question. Throw this at you. Now the curveball.
Hey.
Any advice for newcomers on the path?
Yeah. Well, I think any and all of us would say, follow your heart, follow what feels good to you. What if it doesn't feel good to you, don't do it. If it feels good, if there's love, and I don't just mean attraction, I mean love. Somebody who really gets who you are, a place where you feel like, wow, I've always thought this. This is what I've been doing all along. Like when I talk to my students about altars and in the, place in the classes where we're talking about spirituality, and they'll look around the room and realize they have them. There they all are, Oh, that's what I've been doing. That click, that aha moment, those are things to look for. Another thing is to be aware of things to watch out. There are, just as there's any positive path tradition, we call them, that are about bringing good to ourselves and others, wishing everybody well, doing what we think is going to be for the good of all concerned. There's paths out there who aren't about that, and who may be saying they're one thing and being another. And so a long time ago, Isaac Bonewitz and the New Reformed Druids of North America, or whatever his group was called, made cult danger frame, which was about what to watch out for in religions and spiritualities. And some of the major religions will have one or two of those, but if they have a whole bunch of those characteristics, not good.
Yeah.
Things like transparency. There are things like who's involved in decisions. And, he even has something called grimness, where people can't laugh at themselves. Not a good sign. Or they don't want you to talk about what you're doing to your family or your friends, or, these are things to watch out for and not to do, because they're not good. Those are not good signs. You want to be in a group where you're welcomed, and where everybody is welcomed as who they are. And if it's defining itself as Celtic tradition or women's circle, yeah, it's going to be those people who identify as whoever that group is, right? That makes sense. But if there's exclusion of people beyond that self-definition of how you're defining your circle, it's a little worry there.
Yeah.
Being welcomed and being welcoming, and then feeling like, wow, this is what I do feel. This makes sense to me. This makes sense to me. Or even, well, my odd way of looking at things is welcomed here. Like we've had people in Sister Spirit who considered themselves atheist. because they didn't believe in a theistic view of deity. I mean, they didn't have deities, they had sacraments. But because Sister Spirit uses goddess language and pagan language mostly, they weren't triggered, you know, and they felt like their worldview was accepted because we get it. Yeah, everything's sacred. And if you don't personify whoever, that's fine. You don't have to personify, you know. There's multitude of understandings of the sacred and the divine. So yes. So even if your odd path within your tradition feels accepted, that's great. That's great. And, you know, especially right now when we're just on the internet, it's hard. It's hard to sense the energy, but that's the biggest thing is how does the energy of this group feel? Or how does the way this path makes me feel, how does that affect me? Do I feel energized after circle, even if it's on Zoom? Or, you know, it's like, what kind of music do you like? It should be the kind of response that you get from the kind of music you like. You know, you feel, you know, like your body's happy and connecting. Or if you're not, if you're hurting, do you feel like there's caring coming your way? So, and if you're don't like it, not a good sign. You know. Sunny's in my lap. That's why I said that.
Oh gosh. So let's go ahead and wrap this up for now. I think this has been a lovely interview. I'm down to my last question, obviously. Thank you so much. And it was fun having Sunny visit.
Hi, everybody. Sunny. Bye, everybody.
And this will be, I'll just stop this right now. So I hope you enjoyed that. Please do subscribe to the channel. My goal is 1,000 subscribers. So have friends join too. All right. Take care and I'll see you in the next video.